I'm Sriram Subramanian. I'm Research Director at IDC. I cover modern applications and how they affect the underlying infrastructure. We have Milind Wagle here, CIO of Equinix. Milind, being a CIO of Equinix and, something that didn't see cloud very well to begin with, how did you turn around that? What was your perception of the whole cloud phenomenon, and how did you turn it around?
Sure. So let me talk about it from a company standpoint first. When I joined the company about 9.5 years ago, we had an existential crisis. Like the word cloud was becoming more and more popular. And the question for us was, is this cloud just going to eat up our business? Will the data center be a thing of the past? And so we were just wondering where we should position our offerings. And what we ended up finding out was, one is the clouds actually came to us and built their clouds on our platform. And the reason for doing that was we had global reach, very deep interconnection options available for our customers. And so the cloud actually became a friend, not a foe.
Yeah. Great. So that's kind of worked out well for Equinix, right? Now, being a CIO and who was kind of overtook the cloud, and you must be using or you must be migrating some of your workloads to cloud. What would be your advice to fellow CIOs? What is the strategy that you want to recommend in terms of choosing the right infrastructure?
Sure. So let me actually talk about our cloud strategy from an internal standpoint, and kind of like Adhir mentioned earlier. When someone says, "Have you figured out your cloud strategy?" It's one of the most annoying questions you could field. But it was a little bit ironic for Equinix because we call ourselves the home of the clouds, because there are about 2,900 cloud service providers who have built their platform on top of our data centers. But our ability internally to consume the cloud was very limited. And there was some very practical reasons for that. One is what it boils down to, which is money. And as a company, we are severely OpEx constrained because the metric that we report and measure ourselves externally is EBITDA, AFFO, which tend to be very OpEx constrained. And as an IT organization, we're generally CapEx constrained, because if you look at the CapEx spend against the amount of money that we spend building out our data center platform, we spend somewhere between $2 to $2.5 billion every year building out our platform. So IT CapEx as a percentage of that is negligible. And cloud spend tends to be OpEx. And so to do this radical shift, that would have basically messed up our internal budgets was very challenging. Right. Having said that, I think we have come a long way since that time for a couple of reasons. One is, I think there are just certain areas where there is benefit of going to the cloud. Although I wouldn't say you have to do cloud just for cloud's sake. You have to assess what makes sense for it. There is value in going to the cloud, but it's not cheap. And so when you compare costs with what it takes to run it on-prem versus run it in the public cloud especially, it's not cheap. Sometimes it's twice the TCO of what it would take to run it internally. And but it gives you flexibility for deploying your services faster. There are better DR capabilities, better reach with the clouds, and so we are internally prioritizing what makes sense to go firstly, and then there are some things which will never move to the cloud. And there are like most enterprise organizations, I think we have a mix of legacy stuff and some cutting edge new stuff, right? And so typically the new stuff that we build that creates a differentiator for us as a business, we tend to sort of rapid prototype and build those in the public cloud. But the stuff that's legacy or heavy data workload oriented, we want to keep that data close to us as much as possible. So we are actually adopting a hybrid cloud strategy.
So you do have a cloud strategy, huh?
We do have a cloud strategy, but it's more hybrid, and we are keeping some stuff closer to us and some stuff in the public cloud, and using like a platform like ours to drive interconnection between these clouds.
So maybe we can call it like a right tool for right job.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's every CIO's sort of like.
At least that's a dream, right? Yeah.
That's right. It's
now,
like
when you say hybrid, like, can you talk a little bit more on what kind of public cloud that you use, or if you're allowed to talk about it, what's the workloads, percentage of workloads running on public cloud?
So I'll start with just my portfolio and how it's the mix of clouds in my portfolio, and then I'll talk about like what's our general strategy. So I would say about 45% of our apps are currently on-prem. There's another 40% which are SaaS applications. Okay. So although we don't have technically a cloud-first policy, we have a SaaS-first policy. So wherever it makes sense, we try to see if there's a SaaS app available. And then the rest is either custom-built apps on a variety of like either on-prem or platform as a service capabilities, and or just like pure public cloud. So that's the portfolio. Now, when it comes to deploying our applications, the way we are sort of thinking about it is for some of our critical production loads that will require higher service levels, we're looking at some of the more famous public clouds and distributing them, because we also don't want vendor lock-in with one of them. And then some stuff like the dev test workloads, we don't require higher SLAs. We don't want to invest too much in building those on the cloud, so we're keeping those very close to us in our own data centers. But having said that, even within our data centers, we want to get out of the business, or and my team, are the business of managing colos, right? And so we're looking at internally bare metal as a service providers where we can deploy some of our applications and just get cloud-like attributes, but within the confines of our data centers.
Interesting. Probably in terms of public cloud, it might be a smaller percentage. However, you want to have the as a service capability, right? Well, that's good. So that's something that is something more of a core value, core guiding principle in your transformation.
I wouldn't say like we go with like we're going to go cloud as our starting point. We look at what business outcome we want to create, how critical is the operational backing behind it. Do we have the expertise? Is there some data sovereignty concerns where certain countries you can't let the database or the data leave that country? So we try to define the architecture based on that, and look at the TCO as one attribute, and if the public cloud is the right answer for that, then that's where we go.
So what has been your challenge in bringing up this transformation internally? You also moved from reporting to CFO to CEO recently. So do you see that kind of helping with the transformation, or is it challenging? Talk us through a little bit about that, please.
Absolutely. So the context for what Sriram was mentioning was, so we just recently went through an organizational change within the company, and me and my IT organization used to report to the CFO up until about 2 months ago. And now through this org change, I report to the CEO. And there was a declaration made to the company when this change happened that the CIO organization is going to own the digital transformation strategy for the company. Now, what digital transformation mean is so broad, means so many different things to different people. In fact, like if Guru had asked me the question, like which two phrases I would have said digital transformation is a phrase that I want to stay away from because it's so abused currently. But the outcome of that org change was, I think there was an elevated expectation of the IT organization that there was recognition that we are part of the business strategy, and then there's going to be, we are going to bring ideas to the table. So the biggest challenge for me is the cultural mindset transformation, right? Because historically, most IT organizations tend to be like really good service-oriented, service mindset organizations and order takers in in some capacity, because we are there to please our business stakeholders. And so you take a spec and you build a great technical solution for it. And now I'm trying to drive this transformation within my organization to just like make them own the business problem, get closer to the business strategy, just like get deeper business acumen so that we can go and present ideas and drive impact for the company. And IT, in some respects, is like really well qualified to do that because we get to touch pretty much every part of the organization, every business process, every device, every every resource that you can think of. We are pretty close to that. And so we're most uniquely, I think, a position to drive that transformation.
Would you see that more like from moving from a cost center to profit center?
I wouldn't say cost-centered. That hasn't been the expectation, at least set of me, but I look at it this way. So in Equinix, we have, at the high level, two technology organizations. There's a product organization that is focused on just like creating more product and service capabilities for our customers. And then there's an organization that is internal, is sort of like the back-end operations for delivering these products and services. There's a ton of money that gets sucked into running a company, right? And so the transformation for me is not around like, the expectation is not to suddenly like become a profit center, but is to find opportunities where we can be more effective as an organization. And then through that cost savings, we have a term that we use internally called bend the cost curve. Because we've been growing, we've had double-digit growth for the last 10 years or so. But our cost trajectory is also in line with the revenue trajectory. So it's like, how do we identify opportunities to bend the cost curve so that we can take some of that money that we save through either automation, better productivity, and then put it back in the business to deliver more capabilities.
Great. We're at 2-minute warning now. Any questions from the audience?
I'm KRS Murthy.
Okay.
Your company or anyone from IDC who is into multi-cloud management for cost management and for distributed into multiple clouds, not just private and general cloud, but also on that, as well as security issues.
Are you looking for recommendations? If so, then maybe we can take it offline. I just want
to know, you guys are the experts, right?
We can take it offline if it is recommendation.
So I don't have any specific vendor recommendations to give you because we also play in that a little bit. What I would say is one thing that we are realizing more and more is hybrid multi-cloud architectures are becoming the dominant choice for most enterprises. And tools. You need tools to manage these clouds because if you don't, the costs can go out of control. You need better operational management capabilities of it. We've used some, so I can talk to you offline about it if you want.
Just one more question.
Yeah. So how many different security vendors do you have? And do you feel that you are covered from a security standpoint? What is the gap that you see?
So I'll say one is, again, going back to the previous panel, if there was one question around what keeps me up at night, I would answer the cybersecurity question like I think Adir answered it. And the reason for that is I think the threat landscape has just become, has evolved and has become way more sophisticated than ever before. And our footprint of data centers is in 24 countries. And so I'm always concerned whether our perimeter is strong enough or not. Now, to your point, I think this is one space where I think there are way too many point solutions that solve point problems, and sometimes with overlapping value propositions with other solutions. My biggest hope in this space would be some sort of a consolidation around technologies. The biggest gap that I see, literally there's solutions for everything, The biggest gap, I would say, is like you get a lot of operational intelligence around around your assets, but with AI, ML, I think there's more opportunity to like detect and do breach predictions and all that, and though that space hasn't evolved as much, we are experimenting with one vendor right now. But
Milind,
I
we are
feel
almost out of time.
yeah, I
Sorry
feel
to
like
keep you.
prediction would be one area where I would recommend.
Thank you. We didn't get to play the buzzword bingo, but I'll ask one final question. CSK or MI?
MI, of course.
I hope you're wrong this time.
Yeah.
With that, give him a big hand. Thank you, Milind.
you.